It's almost time for the medicine to take effect, so he needed to take it quickly, but he almost missed it because of that stupid maid. Binka covered her nose and drank the liquid from the bottle. It was a taste that made her frown every time she drank it. At this moment, a voice was heard nearby. He quickly put the jar away and hid behind the wall to see whose voice it was. She was a maid who worked in another palace. "Hey, did you hear the news?" "What news is there?" "That's what I mean. The Duke of Weishafen has finally found the princess." The story of the daughter of the Duke of Weishafen, who grew up as a commoner in a remote cabin deep in the mountains and later found her biological parents, was a topic of interest to everyone, nobles and commoners. It was a story that commoners who dreamed of upward mobility would especially enjoy. Ah, how envious. Maybe I was also born secretly? Ha ha ha. What are we talking about? Wake up. The maids, who had been chatting about dream stories for a while, dispersed, saying that if they did not return quickly, their superiors would scold them. Anyway, all the maids were stupid. It was incredibly unpleasant to have to associate with people like that to survive. It's annoying. And what irritated her most was the princess's dream story about how she found her birth parents and how they revealed their fortune to her. "There are people here who wash dirty rags." He grumbled and shook his head. Regretting his fate would be of no use. It was fortunate that the crown prince was so stupid. He had the perfect personality for brutality and manipulation to his liking. While Binka was returning to the crown prince's palace after criticizing Winfried so harshly, she happened to see the person in question sitting alone on a garden bench, completely out of her mind. She didn't know what had made him so nervous, but it seemed like the perfect opportunity to reach out and gain his favor by offering him comfort. It meant he was like prey, lost to the beast. "Your Highness." When Binka approached in a cheerful voice and spoke to him, Winfried, lost in thought and without realizing it, let out a comical cry of "Ha!" "Oh, Binka. When did you arrive?" "Right now." "What are you doing here? Are you worried about something?" When Binka asked with a big smile, he sighed softly and fell into his thoughts. "Well, actually, the father of the friend I like was very fond of me, right? But when I saw him today, well..." Winfried was so upset that he began to speak while pouting. He met Roderick, who had entered the palace to meet the emperor, but he seemed less than usual and less pleased with him. Roderick had always been calm and kind in front of Winfried, so it was the first time he had seen such a penetrating look in his eyes. "Why the hell is this happening? What did I do wrong?" He was Isla's father, who he loved so much, so it would have been a big problem if something sudden had happened to make him look bad. Seeing the restless Winfried, Binka thought that she really couldn't understand him. Of course, if Winfried had been a normal boy, it would have been a big problem if the father of the girl he liked hated him. But he wasn't just any guy, right? He couldn't understand why he, a crown prince, would care about such things. It would have been enough to point out his disrespectful behavior to the crown prince and demand an apology. He didn't know what a great person the Duke was, but it was impossible to disobey the crown prince. But Binka smiled radiantly and hid her dark feelings. This was because he couldn't forget Winfried's strange look when he revealed his true feelings to her. Isn't it just that, the young woman and His Highness seem close, and he is jealous? She feels like her daughter is being stolen from her. At Binka's advice, Winfried's eyes widened. Jealousy seemed completely out of the question. He is not that kind of person. A father who loves his daughter would certainly do that. He wants me to be by his side for a long time. Of course, Binka, who grew up without a father, could not understand such feelings, but when she observed fathers with daughters around them, she often saw them displaying such tendencies. He was referring to the breed that was commonly called the foolish daughter. "I see." Winfried nodded, as if finally understanding. Only after 10 years did he see his daughter again, so he felt even more fond of her. Maybe that's why Roderick felt so much negativity towards him. One moment. So the Duke already knows that I like Isla. How the hell did he know? Even when we were young, he was so opposed to giving me to Isla. Am I really that unattractive? Winfred clutched her head tightly, saying that she had confessed her feelings to Roderick first, although she had not confessed them to the person involved. And as she watched him clutch his head, Binka had to suppress the pity she felt for him. If that thought even crossed his face, wouldn't all the confidence he had worked so hard to build go down the drain? Is that all you're worried about? No, there is more. At Binka's question, Winfred's face filled with tears and she remembered her conversation with Roderick. It would soon be Isla's 14th birthday, so of course he would ask her to invite him to the banquet. Roderick asked him to pretend not to know Isla for the moment. He couldn't reveal the details, but he also said they should remain wary of Byron's spies. He was excited about the idea of going out with her with complete confidence. But when she was told not only that she couldn't go out, but that she had to pretend that they weren't even friends, her heart sank. However, Winfred, unable to explain all the circumstances to Binka, spoke vaguely. The girl I like asks me to keep my distance for a while. I was just looking forward to the day we could go out and play together. Winfred had a sullen expression, ready to burst into tears if prompted. Who would see this as a crown prince? How can the crown prince seem so unworthy? Binka briefly showed an expression of displeasure, but Winfred, crestfallen, did not see it. Well, I don't know who she is, but she seems like a pretty intelligent woman. Binka, whose expression had softened as if nothing had happened, snorted and thought, the young lady is a woman who masters the fundamentals of love, the tug-of-war. And Binka explained to Winfred in detail the so-called tug-of-war theory. So, Your Highness, please don't be too disappointed and try to face it calmly. But despite her impassioned sermon, Winfred seemed unimpressed. Why are you getting like this? That girl is not trying to distance herself from me by flirting with me. That's for sure. He said he had his reasons. Roderick said he couldn't go into detail about the circumstances, but assumed it was probably because of Byron. So while it was a little disappointing not being able to play with Isla, it was understandable. Yeah, I guess that's what I'll do. But, as I said, you have to push when it's time to push and pull when it's time to pull to take the initiative. If not, you will end up being dragged. To Binka's continued advice, Winfred responded as if she could not fully relate to her words. Why should I take the initiative? Hey! I like that girl. I never tire of saying it. I just don't understand why we have to get into a war of nerves. Binka could not hide her bewilderment. He never imagined that the crown prince, who always chuckled, would reply like this. To begin with, their values were very different. That's because His Highness is still young, and doesn't know much about love. No. I don't think this will change even with age. Even if things were going well for him and Isla, it was unlikely that she would drag him down, but even if she really did, he wouldn't care. Because he appreciated her. He wanted to give her everything good in the world and help her get everything she wanted. Hey, Binka. Thanks for your advice. Thanks to you, now I understand why that girl's father was so cold to me. I need to improve. Winfred thanked Binka with her usual radiant smile, stood up and told her she had to leave. He got up from his seat and left with a very serious expression. He promised himself that he would become a much more trustworthy man than he was now, someone who could be trusted and trusted with his precious daughter. And I didn't think I felt like talking more about Binka and Yila. Somehow, she seems different from the Binka I knew. I thought she was a kind and attentive friend, someone to connect with easily. But after talking to her today, he felt a strange sense of uneasiness. And Binka, left alone in the place where the crown prince had hurriedly left, had to ponder whether she had said the wrong thing. She greeted him with a smile, as always, but she felt that his attitude was different from before. But no matter how much he thought about it, he was not wrong. It was natural. She and Winfred had different values, like oil and water, and it wasn't about right or wrong. Unlike Winfred, who realized this from the beginning, Binka didn't understand it, no matter how much she thought about it. I just believed he was right.